All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Schultz. I'm the program associate at Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. Together with the Energy Star for Small Businesses and Congregations program, we are excited to host part 2 of our energy efficiency series. Last Wednesday, Jerry Lawson, the national manager for the Energy Star for Small Businesses and Congregations program, led a webinar telling us about the best tools and resources to use to increase energy and water efficiencies at home. If you missed part 1 and would like to receive the recording, please let me know. Today, I am excited that Thayer Tomlinson is here with us to teach us about Energy Star Portfolio Manager. This webinar will highlight the importance of measuring and tracking energy and water use in homes and will guide participants through the basics of benchmarking their residences using EPA's online portfolio manager tool. At the end of the webinar, we hope that you will understand the data needed to set up an account in Portfolio Manager, have familiarity with the online tool, and learn where to go for more information. This is an important tool because you can use it to track energy and water efficiency at home. It's also the tool that we use to track your congregation's energy and water efficiency through the PowerWise and WaterWise programs. And so this hopefully will help you both with your congregation and at home. This webinar is being recorded. And since we have a small group today, feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation, but we'll also have some time for questions and discussion at the end. So I'm happy to introduce Thayer to you all. Thayer is the program manager for Energy and Security Group and has supported the Energy Star Small Business and Congregations program for the past 16 years through technical support and benchmarking training. So Thayer, thank you so much for joining us today, and I will turn it over to you now for the presentation.
Thank you, Hannah. It's nice to see you all today. I am going to share my screen, and what I want to go through today is, as Hannah mentioned, to talk about Portfolio Manager. So looking at benchmarking your energy and water use in your homes. I usually give this presentation on worship facilities, so forgive me in advance if I slip into using worship facility instead of homes. But one of the things that we've really found is that although we work on the worship congregation and small business programs, and although it's very important to focus on energy efficiency in those buildings, those organizations are made up of people who live in homes. And so home energy efficiency is also a huge impact on just reducing our overall energy and water use. And just to start out, many people know the Energy Star label is on products. And I also wanted to highlight that it's on over 35,000 commercial buildings. And that would also include congregations. I think we have 128 congregations now that have earned the Energy Star around the country. But it's also on 2 million homes. What I'm going to talk about today, and I just want to clarify this up front, is benchmarking your home using Portfolio Manager. Those homes that you might see that have the Energy Star, those are specifically new homes that are built. There's a residential builder program that can build new construction that is applicable to earn the Energy Star. What we're doing today is really going through and teaching you how to measure your energy and water use so that then you can better manage it. But it won't, at this point, lead to your home earning the Energy Star right now. That's not available for existing homes. Jerry did start out with this in terms of the EPA's mission and stewardship. And I just wanted to remind you all of this again and highlight that, you know, Energy Star as a program really works to provide you the tools, resources, and information, and then recognition for energy and for water efficiency. So let's dive in. Portfolio Manager is, I find, a great tool. It takes a little time to get used to, but what I've done today is through a series of screenshots, I'm going to take you step by step on how to set up an account, kind of data you need, and then how to set up a property, your home, in Portfolio Manager. And I'm doing this through screenshots so that after this presentation, Hannah can share the slides with you if you want more of a step-by-step pictorial on how this works. But at the end of my slides, I can also take a couple minutes and just go online, sharing my screen so you can see in real time what we've talked about through this presentation. If while I'm talking, you have any questions or want anything clarified, please interrupt and just jump in, take yourself off mute. I can't see all of your photos, so if you raise your hand, I won't see you. So please just feel free to jump in. Okay, so what is Portfolio Manager? It's a management tool, and it's an online management tool. It's free, it's secure, and it's private. So Gary, anyone at EPA who's an employee, I or any of the contractors do not have access to any of your data. There are only a few people that have access to all of the data in Portfolio Manager, but it is all private to you. But what it allows you to do, and this is for whether or not you're benchmarking your home, your congregation, or your business, assess your whole building energy and water consumption. It will allow you to track the changes in your energy water consumption, in your greenhouse gas emissions, and in your costs over time. One of the things that's really innovative about Portfolio Manager is that all of the weather is, or all of the data, the energy data is weather normalized, which means if you have a warmer than usual winter or a cooler than usual summer, or any of those things where the weather would affect your energy use, Portfolio Manager takes that into consideration. It also uses your address zip code, so it knows exactly what utility you get your power from, and that actually will help determine what your greenhouse gas emissions are. And as we'll go through later on today, it will show you how your utility's fuel mix affects your property's greenhouse gas emissions. And as I mentioned, Portfolio Manager has hundreds of metrics. Once you get in and you set up a property, you can go into the reporting and you can see all kinds of trends. The more data you put in there, the more trends and findings you can have. But it will show you energy, water, greenhouse gas emissions. Homes right now don't get the Energy Star score. If you put your congregation in there, you would be able to see your Energy Star score. Homes at this point don't have that, but what I will show you is how you can compare your home's energy use to others. So let's go through kind of some of the initial Portfolio Manager basics. I always think of it as three things. Is one, you set up a personal user account, and this is for you. And then you collect data for the property that you want to benchmark. And then you can add different properties into your account. So for example, your account could contain your home, your family members' homes, if you have access to their data and you're benchmarking them, your worship facility, your business, and you can share properties with other people if, say, 4 of you are all doing the benchmarking work for your congregation. So the first step is setting up a user account in Portfolio Manager. And again, I've provided you the links here, but all you need to do is go to benchmark, and I've circled that location where you can log or set up a new account. Once you have an account, here's where you can always log into your Portfolio Manager account. And then setting up a user account is pretty simple. It's just basic data about yourself, your email address, and your address. One of the things that's important to note is that once you select a username, you can't change that. So you're welcome to have a personal username. I just use myself as my username, but that's something that can't be changed over time. And then one of the key things here I want to highlight is when you create your account, I always recommend that you mark yes here if you want your account name to be searchable by other Portfolio Manager account users. And basically what that means is if you need help from somebody, or if you're going to, say, connect with your congregational account, they can find you in Portfolio Manager and send you a request to connect. I find it very helpful to be able to find people that way. They don't have access to your data unless you go through a couple step process to purposely share your data with them, but you can connect with them. So with those steps, you've now set up your user account.
Thayer, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I am not sure whether our church has set up an account or not in this. You said you couldn't change the username. Can there be only one account for one location?
Oh, that's a great question. So each of you, each individual has a user account. But then in step 3, I'll show you how to add properties into your account. So that would be where if your church had an account, 4 individuals could have access to that church account. Sometimes I've seen this with churches and other worship facilities. They actually set up a user account as the church itself. Because they say, we only have one building, we're only ever going to benchmark one building. So their user account is only for one property, which is their church. Hannah might be able to help you find whether or not you do have an account for your church.
I will look and let you know by the end of this webinar.
Okay, great. So the second step is after you set up a user account, I always recommend at this point is you collect data for the property you want to benchmark. And Energy Star has this great, it's called a data collection worksheet online. And again, I'll give you these slides so you'll have access to all of these URLs. But basically you put in 2 pieces of information, what country you're in and what your property type is. And then Portfolio Manager will say, okay, here's the data that you need to put in. So for example, for a home, this lists all the different data that you would need to have to fully benchmark your property. You don't need all of this data to set up a property, but to fully get it benchmarked, this is what you would need. For homes, it's fairly simple. It's really just all the data that's required in general, and then your gross floor area, number of people, and number of bedrooms. So then our third step is actually putting specific properties into your account and setting those up. And as I mentioned before, your account could contain just a single property like your worship facility, or it could contain multiple properties. So for example, here's a screenshot of my Thayer Tomlinson's Portfolio Manager account. As you can see, I have 457 different properties. And that's a lot of them are because different small businesses or worship facilities have shared their property with me, where they wanted help, where they wanted me to take a look at what they were doing. So again, you may have a single property in your account, or you may have over 400 properties. It'll just depend. But here's the place where we would add your property. So once you get to this screen, you'd click on Add a Property, and then Portfolio Manager will say, okay, great. You want to add a property. What type of property is that? So since we're focusing today on homes, we would just click on single family homes. And then we would tell Portfolio Manager that it's a single building and that it's either in construction or it's built. And then Portfolio Manager will ask us to set up just some basic information. What's the name of your property? You can name it My House if you want. It's just something for you to be able to know which kind of property is within your account. And then you just put in the address, the state, anything that has, as you see here, a red star by it is going to be required data. So for example, irrigated area is not required data because not all homes or buildings would have an irrigated area. Anything that has blue text, that's something that you can roll your mouse over and the website will give you a definition of what that actually means. So for example, occupancy, most homes are what we would consider 100% occupied. That it is all the space that's heated and cooled is able to be occupied. In Mary Lou's situation, where there's a top floor that may not be occupied, the occupancy ranges from 0 to 100%. You may just put it at, 80% of the facility or the property is occupied, 20% is not. So once you fill in this basic information, then portfolio manager is going to say, okay, here's the specific things I need from you outside of your basic information. And note that it will carry over the date. I told portfolio manager in the prior screen when my home was built. So it'll just default to January 1st of the year my home was built. And it'll carry over that gross floor area that I put in on the prior screen. It also wants to know the number of people and the number of bedrooms in my home. So once we put that information in, we get to this screen. And in the future, when you access your property and you saw that page where I had 457 properties, if I click on one of those, this is the screen I would come to moving forward from now, because I've provided portfolio manager all the basic information, and now I come to my general property information. As you can see here, I have no energy data, no water data, nothing else in there. I just got a kind of a property shell in there now. So what I'm going to do next is add my energy use information. And I'll walk you through that. Now, today's presentation, I'm really focusing on showing you how to add your energy utility data. If you live in a place where you have metered water and also want to benchmark your water, you can use the same process to set up your water data as well. Today, I'm just going to show you energy, but it'll be the same process for water. So the first thing we need to do is tell portfolio manager how we get our energy. I've chosen that we purchase electricity from the grid and that we get natural gas. As you can see by this list here, there are a number of different ways that portfolio manager can take in your energy data. So for example, in my home, I get electricity, and where I live in Vermont, I actually get propane, and I get it delivered as deliveries. It doesn't come metered from the grid. Portfolio manager asks me that later on, if I get it as deliveries or if I get it in a metered way. So I don't think I've ever come across any situation where portfolio manager wasn't able to account for how you get your energy. You can also see that if you have solar or wind, you can put those in there. If you don't generate on-site with solar or wind, but you buy green power purchases, there's a place later on where you can put that data in as well. So now that I've put my meter data in, I'm going to get started. So now what I need to tell the system is how the energy is actually sold to me and when the meters became active. So what I filled in here, what naturally came through was natural gas and electric. It asked me how I buy that in units. That information will be provided on your utility bill. Most natural gas is billed in CCFs. Most electricity is billed in kilowatt hours, but that can change from utility to utility. I'm telling portfolio manager that my meters became active on the date my house was built, and that both of those meters are still in use. Now, in some instances, and I don't see this as often in houses, but in some instances, you may have had one meter and then it became inactive, and then you have a new meter, but you want to have all that energy data incorporated into your account. And that's when you would start putting in the dates for when the meter became inactive. You're basically saying that meter did exist, it no longer does, but I want to put some data in there from that old meter. And again, if you get delivery energy, if you get propane delivered or wood or that type of thing, you could enter it into as a delivery, and then the system would ask you to answer questions specific to the energy type.
So this wants to know the date I moved in my house? Is that what it's asking?
It wants to know the date your meter became active. Now this one, it doesn't need to know exactly when you moved into your house. What I recommend on this one is, say for example, Mary Lou, you're going to start benchmarking from 3 years ago. You can tell Portfolio Manager that my meter became active 3 years ago. What you can't do is say your meter became active last year and then try and put 2 years of data in prior, because it's going to say, well, you're giving me data for something that doesn't exist yet. So you just have to go back far enough for when you're putting data in. Okay, so now that we've told Portfolio Manager how we're getting our electricity and our natural gas, and that those two are our energy, now we need to provide the data. And there's a couple different ways you can provide data into Portfolio Manager. You can click on add an entry here, and you can manually find all your utility bills and just punch it in month by month for both your electricity and your natural gas. And that's a way to do it. I would highly recommend using the Energy Star spreadsheet because it's a very simple Excel sheet, and I'll show you an example of it. But all you need to do is download the spreadsheet. Then you can put all of your utility data into that spreadsheet and then upload it back to Portfolio Manager, and it'll fill all of that data in. For some of you, your utility may very well just give you that data in a spreadsheet form, so it would be a lot easier than finding all your old utility bills and entering them month by month. My utility does not yet give me that data, so I keep a spreadsheet myself, and I just enter my utility data into my spreadsheet, and then every 6 months or so, I upload it into Portfolio Manager. So here's an example of, I just took a screenshot of the spreadsheet, and what the spreadsheet will ask you is for every billing period, your start date, your end date, how much electricity you used. Cost is optional, highly recommended because it's really important to start tracking that. And then whether or not that's an energy estimation or if it's actual data. It's actual data usually across the board for all of us. So I just put in no for estimation. But the spreadsheet, what it'll do is you'll download one spreadsheet for your electricity. And then if you have a second meter for, say, natural gas or something else, you'll download a separate spreadsheet for the other energy type. If you get all of your energy from your electric utility, it's a single spreadsheet, and it's pretty easy that way. So once you fill out the spreadsheet, then we upload it again right here back into Portfolio Manager, and we click Save. And you can see yesterday I uploaded a spreadsheet with 8 years of data into my test house, which I can show you in a minute. And that populated my whole account. I just uploaded that spreadsheet and hit go. It put in all of that data for 8 years. Make sure one thing on the data entry is always scroll to the bottom and hit save. There's a blue save button at the bottom, but especially as you're doing manual entries, if you click backwards on your browser, it's not going to save it. You really need to scroll all the way to that bottom and hit save. Otherwise, you can lose a lot of time, which is another reason I always recommend having backup data in a spreadsheet. Okay, so now that I've got my data in the Portfolio Manager, what I need to tell the system is, do these 2 meters account for the totality of my energy use? And it knows the 2 meters I've already put in. So I can say, yes, this is it. I don't get any energy from any other source. This is it. I click those, I say yes, and then I apply. And then I can start looking at my energy trends. Now you can see for my example, I only put in, I think, 1.5 years of my natural gas data. But I put in a large number of years of my grid electricity data. My grid electricity data isn't that exciting. It's pretty stable over the course of the year. I live in a very cold weather climate. So as you can imagine, my heating is my biggest energy use, which is why you can see how my natural gas data looks like that. Portfolio Manager, when you set up an account, requires 1 year of data, and that's all you need is 12 months. However, if you have access to prior years' data, I recommend putting in as much as you can, because then you can start looking at trends over time. You can start saying, okay, on the whole, I'm significantly improving, or I'm using a lot more energy than I did 5 years ago. What's going on? And then also, I think it's helpful because, for example, last week, as Jerry spoke in his presentation about the types of improvements you can make in your home, you can start seeing that as you make an improvement, how is my actually energy use changing over time since that improvement has been made? As I said earlier, I have benchmarked my home for many years, and we put in a new heating system about 6 years ago, and I did notice significant decrease overall in our propane use after that happened. And it was just really helpful to not just have a feeling that, oh, I think this did well, I think this helped my home, but actually see it in data and see it in graphic form that, here's where our use was for 5 years, and then after that was installed, we really dipped significantly down.
Sarah, I have a question. May I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
You said that energy portfolio requires 12 months of data. And is that to do the trending? I mean, I'm going to be putting this in probably monthly once we have data for my congregation. So I'm trying to figure out, when you say that, what do you mean? Like, can you not, you can only upload a year's worth at a time. You can't start month by month.
Oh, sorry, let me clarify. So to fully benchmark your building, to get some of the metrics and a score, you need at least 12 months of data. You can start putting in 1 month of data whenever you want, and you can just start uploading month by month.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I always recommend, if you have access to it, try and go back 2 or 3 years though, because I think it's just really helpful to have that.
There is no data. We'll be starting from 0 in about 6 months. We hope.
Okay, understood.
Does it work? Question, does it work in the other direction too? Can you put in this year and then go back later and put in prior years?
Absolutely. So you can either do that by hand, as I showed you, or you can basically take that portfolio manager spreadsheet and populate it as much as you want to backdate it and upload it, and it'll put it in the right place. In portfolio manager, I say this in an affectionate tone, is very cranky. So if you overlap days, or if you tell it 2 months in a row that you have different data, it's going to give you a big yellow bar saying, something's not right here. So it's tracking what you're giving it.
Thayer, you also mentioned earlier that there's a place to put that if you buy green energy, there's a place to add that to you. Am I getting ahead?
No, you're right. And when I do the tour in a minute, I'll show you where you can put that in.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so then at this point, now that you've put your data in, you've successfully benchmarked your home. You can see now I can start looking at the metrics that we had seen earlier, which before were all zeros, right? Now that we've put energy data in here, we can start looking at trends. The reason my baseline and my current is as it is because I told Portfolio Manager that I have 2 different meters, right? I have a natural gas and I have an electricity meter. But I did not give Portfolio Manager all the data for my natural gas until I think until December 2016. So the first full year of data that it has for me for both my sources of energy is considered my energy baseline. That's my starting point. And then it's current up till September 2018 because that's where I stopped putting in one of my energy sources. And I wanted to highlight this because I think it's really helpful, especially if you're looking at trends in your costs, your greenhouse gas emissions or other uses, to keep that data as current as possible, because it really lets you see how you're progressing. I wanted to speak briefly. You'll notice that there's a source energy use intensity and a site energy use intensity. Now, if this were a congregation, we'd very likely have an Energy Star score showing up, because congregations are eligible to get a score, and that's a number between 1 and 100. And it's very easy to see where you are on that range. Homes currently don't qualify for a score, so we have to think of our performance in terms of EUI, which is our energy use intensity. And that's basically our energy use per square foot. And we get both our site EUI and our source EUI through Portfolio Manager. And I'll go through those in a minute. But basically what we're looking at is to try and get as low an EUI as possible with our homes. There are some homes, as there are some congregations, that may be older, draftier, just aren't going to get to the point where they're going to be a super efficiency performer. And what Jerry and I always say is, it's not necessarily the number that counts, but it's the continuous improvement trends that count. You know, can you make a 10%, 20%, 30% improvement in your efficiency year on year? And that's what we're really looking for. Not necessarily if your building is going to be able to have a super low EUI. And just briefly, I wanted to highlight the difference between site energy and source energy, because this comes up a lot in Portfolio Manager. Your site energy is really what you're using at your property on site. But what Portfolio Manager looks at, especially when we look at your greenhouse gas emissions, is your source energy. So you can see it's all of the energy that was used to create your electricity, to transmit your electricity, and to use that electricity or that natural gas or whatever other types of energy you have on site. And so your source EUI is often going to be sometimes twice as big as your site EUI. And that is where, if you have a utility that, say, produces coal-based electricity, your greenhouse gas emission score is not going to look as good as a utility that probably has a more, larger renewables mix. And I wanted to just turn back here. So per that source and site, my source and site isn't as large. And one of the reasons being is my utility is Green Mountain Power. I live in Vermont, and a lot of our power is hydropower from Quebec. So it's considered a lower source in terms of EUI and lower greenhouse gas emissions. Because we put our zip codes in when we set up our properties, Portfolio Manager, as I mentioned earlier, does know what your utility is. If you're in a place, and I don't know specifically in Georgia how it works, but I know in Arizona, there are so many different tiny utilities depending on zip codes. There is a place in Portfolio Manager where you can go in and make sure it's assigned the right utility for your energy provider. And before we go in and just look at live, I do want to put a quick plug in for the training page. The Portfolio Manager trainings have excellent resources there. They've got short, kind of videos if you want to know how to do a certain thing. They have a lot of step-by-step fact sheets on here's how you do this, here's how you do that. And they also have a number of webinars, including a Portfolio Manager 101, 201, and 301 that are something you could watch on your own time. That'll give you probably much more high-level general training than what I'm giving you now, but it's a great opportunity to learn more or ask questions if you have them. And then when you are in Portfolio Manager, I'll show you this when we go into our live tour, there is a button that says help. And if you click on that button, it'll take you to the help desk here. I do a lot of Portfolio Manager trainings. I help a lot of congregations with their accounts. And I use this all the time because especially looking at the knowledge base, there's so many detailed answers to frequently asked questions. or very detailed steps on, okay, I have solar that I'm producing on site, but I'm sending some of it back to the grid, but I'm using some of it on site. How do I actually put this into my account? All of those questions are answered through the help desk in their frequently asked questions. However, if you can't figure out an answer, they do have this green ask a question box, and you can just click on that and say, here's my name, here's my email, here's my portfolio manager ID, and I'll show you where that is also. How do I do this? Or why is this looking weird? And I've never had them not get back to me in 24 hours. So really timely responses and very thorough responses. And then again, Jerry went through this on his presentation last week, but I just did want to highlight that since we're speaking about homes, Energy Star has a great tool called the Home Energy Advisor that gives you almost a checklist of the things to do in your home and track what activities, actions you've taken in your home to increase your efficiency there. And again, you can see that there's a lot of different suggestions, tips, things to get started for specifically residential. And where you can create a profile, get recommendations, and improve your efficiency. This isn't really tied to Portfolio Manager, but I think it's another example of a great Energy Star resource. So you've got my information. You'll get a copy of these slides, but what I'd like to do now is stop sharing this presentation and give you just a quick look at a Portfolio Manager account, specifically the one I just showed you. While I'm getting that set up, does anyone have any questions? Okay. So let's take a look here. Here's my Portfolio Manager account. This is what we just saw. Again, this is for my home, and it shows my source and site EUI. As I mentioned, for anything that's in blue, I can mouse over that, and I can get kind of an instant highlight of what that actually means if I don't understand what that means. A few things I wanted to show you. If something in your home changes, and this is the same thing if you're benchmarking your worship facility and you have some details change, you can always click on this details tab, and that'll show you what you've put into Portfolio Manager so far. You can also then say, you know what, I need to correct some mistakes of home specific information I put in. So you can just click there and it'll bring up, you know, what you've already told Portfolio Manager and when you told it to them. You can always cancel if you don't want to change anything, you just want to see what's in there. Now, going to our energy page, let's take a look at our electric meter. As I mentioned yesterday, I put in a lot of data for my house. And sometimes it takes a minute to load, so I'm just going to let it load here. I put in a lot of data for my house yesterday. And one of the things sometimes people get hung up on is the years of data. So I've got a significant amount of data in here. See those yellow bars? That's where it got mad at me because I told them that my meter started on January 1st of 1996. However, I didn't start putting energy data in until 2011. So you can see, if you don't want to see those yellow bars, you can just tell them that your meter got set up on, you know, that date in 2011. You can also look at data from specific years, or you can just ask it to show you all the different years. I am going to, there we go. I'm going to have it show me all these different years, including 2016. Now, I showed you a screenshot of the spreadsheet that showed you, or that asked when the start date was for that energy, when the end date, my usage, cost, and estimation. What I didn't show you is if I purchased green power. So I can always just click on here and say, okay, how much of this electricity for this date was green power? And then it's going to ask me some additional questions, which if you're purchasing green power, it should be as part of that utility bill. If you can say, I don't know anything, and then what kinds of power it was. And portfolio manager will actually take that all into consideration, and that will show up in terms of your greenhouse gas emissions score that I showed you on that first overview slide. And then you can just save it. Now for me, I didn't fill anything in, so it's going to say, well, you didn't tell me anything. So then I can just click this. But as I said, I'm going to unclick that one. Remember, anytime you put in this data, now if I suddenly got data that started in 2010 through 2006 and I wanted to add it in, I could just download that Energy Star spreadsheet, put it in that spreadsheet, upload it, and it would all slot in right before this existing data. So it knows where to fill it in. But as I mentioned earlier, make sure if you do any changes here, you go all the way to the bottom and click save, so you don't lose all that work that you've done. A couple other things I wanted to show you while we're in my account is how to look at some of the reporting functions and features of Portfolio Manager. I think for houses, it might be, I don't want to say less exciting, but I think where it's really more exciting is for worship facilities, or when you have a lot of different reporting features you want to highlight. So as I said, when you're in Portfolio Manager, and this is the page you'll always come to once you log in and click on your property, this gray line of bars is information that's specific to this property. So anything that's on this property will be in this gray line of bars. This line of blue bars up here is specific to my account and to all of my properties. So if you had 5 different properties, this is how you would share your account with somebody else. It's how you would apply for the Energy Star, but it's also a really interesting function of recording. So I can run reports on any of the different properties. You can see here, I've run a lot of different reports from different times, but this will let me basically create a template. If I wanted to say, what's the greenhouse gas emissions between my home and my congregation and how they changed over time? I could click on here and create a new template and bring up for my current year, and I could do it for one property, all my properties, and then you can see I have a ton of different properties. So I could do it for any of my properties, and then I can just go in and select a number of different information and metrics. So if I just wanted to look at what's my weather normalized energy use look like month to month, I can download that in a spreadsheet function. And I wanted to show you this if you ever need to do any reporting on your progress or on your data and you want to do a graphical representation. It's a great way to download data into a spreadsheet, and then you can do graphics from that. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to stop here and just ask you if you have any questions, and I can go through them and answer them.
Thayer, as far as entering data, I was playing around with this last week after your first presentation, and I did use the spreadsheet that you downloaded, but you still sort of have to manually enter it, right? It's just the advantage is you've got it saved in one place, so you don't have to keep doing it if something goes wrong. Is that correct?
Yeah, you do, and I will I'll say this is that spreadsheet is so much easier and faster to use, and there's caveats to it. It wants the data in a certain form. If a decimal point's in the wrong place, it'll just say, no, I don't accept this spreadsheet, and it won't always tell you why. You can always send it to me because I've looked at a lot of people's spreadsheets and I can look through them pretty quickly and say, this is why it doesn't like what you're sending it. But yes, you do have to still format that data so it is in an acceptable form for the spreadsheet.
So I would like to just jump in and say that, well, thank you first there for this presentation. It's been really helpful. And I will send you all this PowerPoint so that you have her great slides as well, that you all can use to follow along. But I mentioned this at the beginning, but I want to say again that if you have been through our PowerWise or WaterWise program, your congregation is already in Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and I would be happy to share that with you. So if you create a user profile like Thayer walked us through at the beginning of the presentation, then I can share the congregation's profile with you so that you can see what your Energy Star score is, and then you can take your current bills and continue tracking your information, your energy use, and all of that with your congregation. And I checked Art, and your congregation is already in there. So if we want to connect offline, I can send you an email and we can set up a time for me to share that profile with you once you have your own user account, and we can kind of talk through what that looks like and how you can continue to enter that information. And I'm happy to check for the rest of your congregations as well. So just want to let you know that that is an option, and I would love to work with each of you to connect you with your profile if you already have one, so that you can continue to track that information. You can put in bills from the past, you can put in current bills and continue to track forward, and you can see what's already in there.
Okay, well, I think if there's any other questions, again, you've got access to my email address, but please feel free to reach out. And as I said, Hannah, you've got a copy of my slides. Please feel free to share them. And hope you all have a wonderful experience using Portfolio Manager. I've found it a great tool over time, really helpful.
Thank you so much there. And yes, I will send you all a recording of this presentation and the slides. And feel free to reach out to either of us with questions.